Hello everyone. This is a photo, my favorite photo from last year. It was taken in Inner Mongolia, very close to a city called Shiwuchi. And it's not a screensaver, it's a real photo. The photographer took it sitting on the back of a motorbike. We were going 80 kilometers downhill. And to me, it's just a great example of why I like cycling. The wind through your hair, the excitement, the race, everything is just, for me, it's a fantastic feeling. So this speech is going to be a little bit egotistical about me and why I like cycling, but I'll also touch on a few things that I learned about training, about nutrition, things about the community that you have around you when you train, and also just challenge. So that's what it's about. For me, I've always liked cycling. It's been an exciting journey for me. When you're cycling and the wind's rushing through your hair and everything's bumpy and you go around, it was exciting for me as a kid. I enjoyed cycling then. I started getting better at it. I started taking part in races. I started really enjoying the experience of it. Races started getting quite competitive, so I found triathlon where you could compete against yourself. And I enjoyed that too. It's like an internal competition. I wasn't very good at ball sports, basketball, football, anything like that, but give me a direction to run in, I could do that. Cycling, swimming for a long time, fine with me. So I really started getting better and better at triathlon. And it got to the point where in high school, I managed to make provincial teams. Now, back in the day, you didn't get pictures on TikTok or on YouTube or things like that. We had a very traditional print media, so you know you made it big when you made the local newspaper. And this is me in a couple of pictures when I was making the provincial team. Things started getting better and better, and I actually started seeing myself as a professional athlete, something that could really become big. And then there was a big announcement. Triathlon would become an Olympic sport in the 2000s. I finally had something very big to train for. And I had this 4-year plan about how I would build myself up for triathlon to be in South Africa's first Olympic team in Sydney. It consisted of a very long training period where I was going easy and then getting more and more intense as it came closer to the time. I had to prepare myself for provincial races, for national races, for international races, so that I could be chosen for the team. And I had a perfect build-up to the season. But just as I was getting ready for the provincial race, I had a motorbike accident. 5 weeks of no training. I had trained just enough to get into the provincial team, but at the national team competitions, I came 4th instead of 3rd. I didn't make the team that went to Mexico that year, which means I wasn't selected for the Olympics. And so the Olympic dream started to fade. As I didn't have something big to train for, things started happening in real life. Well, I got married, I had kids, I worked on my master's, I got a job that became really focused in, and so sport starts to disappear from your life. And you know, when that happens, it's a real shame because things are really good for you when you're training. But you know, when you focus on other things like family and work and stuff, you become fatter, you become more relaxed. You still train every now and again, but you don't train intensely. An accident took me out of sport, out of intense and competitive sport. But actually, an accident brought me back into sport. So about 4 years ago, I had a skiing accident, and trying to rebuild myself from that was a purpose. At that stage, I was very overweight. And I had the accident, and I had to slowly start rebuilding myself. And it started with some things about the way I was at that stage, my nutrition. So I had to learn to really change what I ate and when I ate it. I found that eating protein is very important, not only because it makes you feel full, but it really doesn't mess with your sugar cycle and blood sugar cycle as much as having carbohydrates. But I also found out that when you do train intensely for more than 20 minutes, you really need carbohydrates. And so I adjusted the way I ate. There's also something that your body adapts to what you're eating. So if you're eating a very general diet, your body isn't very good at burning specific things like proteins or like carbohydrates. So when you change your diet it becomes very efficient at burning protein or burning carbohydrates as opposed to just a general energy machine. There's one cardinal rule, calories in, calories out. So if you're taking in too much of food, it doesn't matter how healthy the food is. If you're taking in a lot of food, and you're not burning it, you're still going to gain weight. So that's just some ideas about nutrition. The other thing is about training. So there needs to be a balance of how much intensity you put into training, especially if you're building up. You need to stress your body, but you also need to rest your body. There's a rule of about 10% that you shouldn't increase the amount that you train more than 10% every week. That can be 10% further, 10% faster, 10% more intense, but that's the basic rule, just 10% each week. Also, there's some things about, specifically for endurance sports, the idea of 80-20, that 80% of the work that you do is just at a very relaxed pace where you can actually still talk. And only 20% of the training that you do is at a very high intensity. The other idea is that you should have a lot of variety in what you do. So I train very intensely for cycling during the summer, but in winter I do things like gym work and running and trail running just to vary the kinds of stress that I put my body under. Another important thing for me was building the right community around me. I found friends that had the same interests in me, and I highly recommend that you, if you're ever looking at taking sport to the next level, find a community that helps you, that is very positive about the type of things that you do, that can give you advice, that can train with you and get excited about the same things. And if you can't find that community, build that community yourself. I did that before with hiking and trail running. It's meaningful not only for your own life, but if you create something for others, it's meaningful to them. And then challenge is also another one that's really important. I took part in a really challenging event in Yunnan, which was fantastic. It was a 6-day event, and we were doing about 120 kilometers every day. We were going around the most beautiful areas in Yunnan and finished with a mountain climb that was just incredible. So those are some of the things that are really important as you're lifting up. For me, the big challenge for me last year was taking part in the World Championships. I got to a level where, in my age group, I was able to compete with some of the top people in the country. And that allowed me to qualify for the World Championships in Australia. It was quite an exciting event, and you can see here, there are a lot of people in their national clothing, their national kit. I got to represent South Africa. And at the start line, everyone was buzzing. There were about 2,000 of the best cyclists in the world at this event. We started off with a 20-kilometer hill climb and descent, which was very intense. Then we had about 30 kilometers of flat through the rainforest in Australia. We did another 10 kilometers climb and descent, and we finished with 40 kilometers along a beautiful coastline in Australia, which was, really difficult, but also fantastic to look at the beauty in Australia. So that was me. I managed to finish in the top 50, not as good as I'd hoped, but certainly I'm quite happy with being in the top 50 in the world for cycling in my age group, the old man group. So that was Australia. It now also set me up for this year. This year we had the World Championships qualifying event in China, which was really exciting in Hainan. This was the event. It was a bit shorter race. It was only 80 kilometers. Not quite as many people took part in this race as took part in the event in Australia, but again, this was just the qualifying event. I managed to get into a front group in my age group, and we were able to really push forward. I broke away from the group at the top of one of the hills, and somebody else followed me down, and together we worked right till a very, very good point. The final 13 kilometers was all uphill, and it was really intense. The guy that came with me on the break followed me up the hill, and he followed me all the way to the end. So these are just some photos from the event. And you can see that guy behind me, he managed to sprint past me at the end. So what does that leave? I qualified for this. Not only did I qualify, but I came second overall in my age group. I now qualify for the next big challenge in my life, which is going to be 2026, the World Championships in Japan. So that's my big goal. I hope you learn to enjoy a sport so much that it becomes a big part of your life too. Thank you.